people no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements, what can he now disclose? Part 1. I disclosed to my minority partner that the majority partner owed him $100K. He could have easily received a check for that amount, but he sued for $700K, spent $300K on a lawyer, and got nothing. I saw the owner of a company I worked for do the same thing. A sales employee sued for not getting proper commissions, and the CEO easily paid 10 times that amount fighting it in court, only to lose and have to pay anyways. Spite. Not me, but my cousin. He was working his first job in marketing in one of the top marketing firms in the country. My cousin is ridiculously good-looking. Used to be a model for A&F, not just the local store models, but one of the national models, and dresses well. So he gets to the job and his boss's boss, male, starts hitting on him ridiculously. He's invited to lunch, dinner, asked if he wanted to go to the boss's weekend home, all the time turning him down. One time in the car, his boss told him how quickly he would advance if he spent the weekend with him, and my cousin recorded the entire conversation. He nopes the boss and then ghosts him on invites for weeks until the boss stops asking. Fast forward to 3 months after he's hired, and he's doing his review with HR, and his immediate supervisor is there. He starts to hear about how he's not a good fit, not a team player, etc. They let him know they were terminating him, and he grabbed the paperwork they wanted him to sign and put it in his pocket. Then he pulled out his phone and played his boss's recording. After he was done, he looked at the HR manager and asked if she had anything to say. They both left the room acting shell-shocked, and he stayed there in the conference room until the HR manager came back an hour later. She put her boss in the conference line, and they started telling him it was illegal to record private conversations. They would file charges, etc. He laughed and told them he was going to the press, and that he knows they would love to put him on TV. 3 days later, he was signing a non-disclosure and picking up a check almost big enough to pay for his 3 years of law school. For anyone wondering, no, the guy who harassed him was not fired, and he has since been promoted again by the company. My best friend worked at a roadside attraction near Chattanooga, TN, called Ruby Falls. There's something else called Ruby Falls elsewhere in the country. It's supposedly a waterfall inside a cave. Of course, the trail to the cave is redone with all sorts of rock brought in from around the world. I think they've owned up to that part now. But the waterfall itself is barely a trickle naturally, and then only in the wetter season. They've run a pipe up there to supplement the falls, hidden by cracks and crevices and cemented over, and powered by a pump off to the side, which you can't hear when the water is splashing down from 100 feet overhead. It's 99% from the city of Chattanooga, or maybe Lookout Mountain, municipal water supply. Of course, with such a wet area, old electrical wires going back to the Great Depression, and 300 feet underground, it sputters or shorts out and stops every now and then. The first rule in the falls room is make everybody leave immediately if the power goes out. Not for safety, but because the fable agreed upon will be shown as fake. The book you're reading might only be a bestseller because the author had enough money to buy thousands and thousands of copies, have them shipped to a warehouse for storage, and eventually destroyed. It's not an NDA. It's a secrecy agreement with DoD that elapsed after 25 years. I worked as a programmer for the U.S. Air Force on the global USAF budget in 1979 through early 1981. There was a period of time after Reagan became a leading candidate, but before he won the election or took office. Jimmy Carter was a lame duck president, and many senior officers really hated him. During this time, the USAF had flown the B-1, not the B-1A, not the B-1B. This was when it was just the B-1. People had spent a significant portion of their careers working on delivering the B-1 program. They really believed in the B-1 as a strategic, long-range supersonic bomber. Jimmy Carter hated the B-1. He viewed it as a wasteful, unnecessary, bloated program designed to keep the builders afloat at the expense of the taxpayer. He had cancelled the project in something like 77, but a couple flying examples were available, but never to see service. Reagan loved the B-1. It was everything he loved about our military programs. Fast, sexy, high-tech, and better than anything the Soviets had. All of that being said, here's what happened. Jimmy Carter gave explicit orders that the only 2, not certain, B-1s currently flying be broken up into parts, the program completely cancelled, the engineering materials be archived at the Pentagon, and all funding ended. He wanted direct evidence sent to him that this had happened, in the form of pictures of the broken-up aircraft. Ronald Reagan was informed of this order by sources in our organization. Regan let it be known that Carter's order was absolutely not to be followed under any circumstances. Now, where do I come in? I was just this guy working on the AF budget. It was a top-secret clearance, mainly because any analyst could correlate money to named projects, both globally and on bases. So, one day, I am going over daily reports, and I see this massive new expenditure for, I think, Wright-Patterson. It's not in the approved project list. It's not in the unapproved project list. So clearly, it has not gone up to Congress. Yet the money is actually in the dispersal. So I go to my boss and I point it out. It doesn't belong there, so obviously it's a mistake. He agrees, and we reverse it. A couple of days later, all breaks loose when a general officer I'd never seen before comes rampaging through the office, demanding to know who shorted this funding. Now at this point, we get hauled into a room, sworn to secrecy, and told to fund this maintenance project. What was the project? Pay a huge team of contractors to very carefully disassemble one of the B-1s, drag in parts from other aircraft, show it being crushed, and send pics to Carter. Meanwhile, reassemble the plane and hide both of them inside black hangars. And that was why Regan was able to have the program restarted literally within days of taking office. The program was fully back online in 1981. Technically, I'm still bound by the NDA, but the company didn't know how to write NDAs. It's like they had the following conversation. Legal. Hey, we need an NDA just like all these other companies have. Publisher. Do you know how to write an NDA? Legal. No. The NDA was for a role-playing game that I signed up to playtest with a group. The NDA itself actually forbade me, the person running the game and providing feedback to the company, from talking about it, but had no such restrictions in place for anyone I ran the game for. It only required me to sign it, not any of my players. The way it was written, I was not allowed to play the game with any of the players in the group. How they expected anyone to playtest the game, I don't know. The way that RPG playtests are supposed to happen is 1. The company releases a playtest document. 2. People play it. And then 3. They make changes for another round of playtesting. What actually happened is the company changed the core resolution mechanic of the game in the middle of the first round of testing, in the middle of a long message forum thread, based on the feedback of people who were openly admitting they only read the rules and hadn't actually played the game. One of the people who stated they hadn't played the game also said he didn't have a group of players they were going to play it with. So they changed the game based on nothing but feedback from people who hadn't tested anything. To top it off, after my group actually played the game and submitted feedback, we weren't invited back to the second round of playtesting. Also, we were left off the playtest credits. The secret ingredient in Jimmy John's tuna salad is Kikkoman soy sauce. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning, the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did Sex and the City tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, and significantly, much more popular bakery. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete or NDA contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store, because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires 2 products, one of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal or dust or powder. Quite literally, anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Well, you forgot to say what the secret browning agent is that all the pretzels get dipped into before they go on the sheet and into the oven. It's baking soda and water. Mystery solved! Also, lemonade, 2, 4, 8, refrigerate. You know NDAs are only good if you have the money to sue. Worked with a company that didn't pay me, so I told them their NDA didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response? You can't even afford to pay me. You surely can't afford to sue. They also don't extend to keeping you from reporting illegal activity to the justice system. Some places may try to make people believe that and may even try to imply it in the NDA, but it has no legal standing. I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse, where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There are some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. There are these small machines, they look almost like a barbecue grill. They always wanted us to be super fast glazing the donuts. Working in a hot room and working at super fast speeds, it was natural for a lot of people to sweat to just drip in the chocolate underneath us. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station. I was wrongfully terminated by a past employer. They now balled a settlement offer and withheld payment on my accrued vacation. This part was actually illegal. It took about a year to get to the point where their attorneys realized that they were not lying about them holding back the accrued vacation, and this caused them to make a more than generous offer to make my claim against them go away. That sounds like my brother-in-law. After 8 years and doubling the sales of the brand he was responsible for, a couple of guys from head office walked him out with cause. The last year on record at the time was also their biggest year by about 10%. They sent him an offer on a Friday night and said they needed it signed by Monday morning. He ended up suing and winning way more than the pittance they offered. A couple months later, 2.5 days before Christmas, they walked me out the door. Worst part was, I was almost on holidays for a week. Had they not gotten me before Christmas, the calendar year would have changed over and I would have been entitled to profit sharing. I signed an NDA after negotiating a 6-figure settlement with my mortgage lender. Back in 2013, the bank illegally sold my home while I was living there and making monthly payments. I discovered this when new owners evicted me and my 3 kids. At the time, I thought someone was trying to steal my identity, etc. I spent the next 2 years writing legal documents and had to represent myself in court. The bank owned every legit legal firm I contacted. Also, the first lawyer I hired took my last $7,000 and was promptly disbarred for misconduct with previous cases. I had no money, no home, but I had a laptop, printer, and access to the county court law library. We were about a week away from selecting a jury when we came to a settlement agreement. In the end, each of my kids, now in their 20s, got an inexpensive new car and I live at the beach. Which bank, you ask? I can't tell you the name, but might I suggest that it rhymes with case? They settled because they were worried that if the case went to trial, it would become public. Then everyone would know for certain that they'd lied, cheated, and swindled to steal homes from hard-working people. The bank would lose when no one took out new loans with them.